he's going to add a lot more value than I will.
We're waiting just a couple of more seconds.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little behind the real time, you know.
I'm happy actually the conference started today and it ended at a little past 12. So it worked at 12 o'clock on the West Coast. So that was 3 o'clock your time. So it just ended a little while ago. So it's perfect.
I'm trying to look for the advertisement for this. Gosh, I hate it. I can't manage my text. I just sent it to somebody. I feel like I sent it. Maybe I sent it to Karen. I don't remember.
Yeah,
the thing that has the picture of you guys.
The link. That
I don't want the link. I want the picture.
No, the image is on there. I'll send it back to you again. Hold on one moment. Here it is. Check your text message thread. You should be back in there.
Okay. All right. Hey, I think we're hitting. Yeah, I just want to put this out there again in case anybody doesn't realize it's happening on our church line. Give me a second. We do have 10 people on, so this is a good thing. Okay, one last blast out to the church. Let's see. We have Bev. And Bev. Okay. All right. So we want to say welcome to everybody who's joined us today. And we are the Racial and Social Justice Task Force of the Huguenot Park Reformed Church. And we have been gathering since January of 2021 to really explore the structural issues of racism and social injustice so that we can put our heart and soul and hands and feet to make the world more righteous, more loving, and more just, which we believe is what our God asks us to do, in the way that all of humanity will come together as brothers and sisters. We're here today for our community conversation series. Today is a difficult conversation. And we welcome two extremely insightful and compassionate people who have worked on Staten Island for way over a decade in service to people in need, in service during time of disaster and human suffering. And that is the Reverend Karen Pershing, who serves as the coordinator for the Staten Island Interreligious Leadership, which is a leadership dedicated to hospitality and social justice here on Staten Island across all of our faith community leaders. And we're with Farid Kader, who is the founder and co-executive director of the Staten Island Yellow Boots, which came together to respond to the very basic grassroots needs of neighbors who were severely impacted and lost their homes, their livelihood, and in some cases, family members as a result of Superstorm Sandy in October of 2012. And since then, he has been really on the lead of Staten Island in terms of disaster response, serving as a member of the Staten Island Long-Term Recovery Organization, which actually the executive director is Reverend Karen Pershing. So this is kind of like a family thing gathering today. But he is also a person with a deep knowledge of cybersecurity needs and expertise. Let me just see, I somewhere have my notes on all the things to tell you about Farid, but he was born, let me get this right, it comes from two immigrants, one born in Jerusalem and one from the West Bank. And he himself lived in Israel during the major intifada back in 1993 during the Oslo Accords. And he moved to the United States with his parents for a better life, as did all our families in some way or another, and is now serving as an executive officer of a Fortune 63 company that deals with security needs that help our own country as well as others around the world. And we're also joined today by Arkhan, who is from the Gaza, who left there several years ago after a major war. And he is actually a Palestinian Iraqi, born in Iraq, raised in Gaza, and immigrated to the United States 9 years ago. He continued his studies here, and his background is in architecture and urban planning with a specialty in data engineering. I'm lucky I could say all those words, much less understand them. So it's so beautiful to have you here. The way we're going to proceed is we're going to give the floor to Karen, to Farid, and to Arkhan to share their perspectives on what has become both an enduring war and a major humanitarian crisis in our world, so that we who come from faith traditions, and specifically our church as Christians, can help discern through your testimony, through your reflection, how it is that we should respond best to help raise up life and stop death across the board in this terrible moment in history in the Middle East. So we open, and we're going to be taking questions in the chat. So if you're here and you have a question, if you just drop it in the chat, I'm going to monitor the chat and make sure we get all of our questions answered. But we will be muted except for the three of you and myself, who will be speaking intermittently in the next 45 minutes. So I'm gonna toss it over first to Karen, who's just returned from Israel a couple of weeks ago in the West Bank, and to open it up to all of you as we go around your reflections on this moment in history, what you know, what you've learned from your experience, from where you've lived, from where you've traveled, from whom you've spoken to, the situation, and what it is that we may do as Christians to help alleviate the suffering and bring peace. Karen?
Pastor Troya and Pershing, just one quick thing I wanted to add in there. I'm very proud to have Arkhan with us right now on the line. I mean, just one thing I want to be very clear about. When I lived there, 91 through 93, we saw some crazy things, and it was literally when the peace was trying to get off the ground. But Arkhan was there in the middle of all of the skirmishes and everything else, and he's self-made. So the fact that he was able to be there, basically escape there, and come to the United States to build a life for himself and his family is, for me, I'm even interested in hearing more about it.
Okay, so why don't we start with Arkhan, and then we can bounce
Absolutely.
off of Arkhan's thought. Okay, Arkhan, you're on. I don't know. I think Ed Sullivan used to do that, but go ahead.
Thank you, Farid. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think my experience compared to other people who just having what they have in right now, it's a fracture of, suffering and very desperate and sad reality. As you mentioned, Terry, I was born in Iraq. My mom is Iraqi. My dad was in Iraq to do his studies. He met my mom. They were in the same college. They fell in love, as any couple in this world, right? And he's a Palestinian, so he wanted to come back to his roots. And Palestine was a mess back in the day until the Oslo Agreement happened. So, as any Palestinian, they wanted to come back when they heard that there's something happening. And most of you might know what the Oslo Agreement was about. It's just about creating a state, let's say, it's a peace treaty to recruit the Palestinians back to where they are, because Israel was existing at that point. They were in good shape. We were not in good shape as Palestinians. I was born in 1994, so things were messy. So my dad came with my mom, and so I was born there for 2 years. I came back in 95 as 1 year old kid, and I was just starting my life within the stone era, where we're just fighting with stones versus heavy military weapons back in the day. Automatic weapons was there, tanks were there. We see them on a regular basis. Probably not the same experience that Farid might have witnessed as a kid, because we both have two different sides where he probably had to go through checkpoints and stuff. We don't witness that because Gaza was a fortified, just city by itself where settlements were in between. Um, I used to go to school and we would see the settlements from far away where like we just it's like what's the name of that movie? The show, the what was that show called that was just to watch? That's what the show it's called.
What show?
It's similar to Gaza. Whatever is that show? The one we watched is similar to Gaza's story.
Oh, Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, yeah. If you guys
Oh.
watch Hunger Games, I just watched Hunger Games and I was shocked because it replicate the reality of our lives where I'll be honest with you, we were oppressed, but we did not feel it because we're like birds in cages, and the life is different for us. We got used to low amount of, electricity, low amount of supplies, low amount of things. Our life was very basic. And that's why a lot of people would see Palestinians, and especially from Gaza, come out of Gaza as they're like sweethearts, like they're just very pure. The internet was not that accessible back in the day, so like our access to life is like literally those people who like we live in a jungle. We're like, it's basic life things, and we're very educated because we have nothing else beside learning new things. So at the same time, we were just used to like losing family members on daily and weekly basis, where Israel would just come out of nowhere and occupy the excuse because Hamas was just started when they say it's Hamas in my era because they started in the 89 between 89 and 91. So it was just the excuse that they were trying to eliminate this person and try to this person, but on the way, a kid or an elderly woman or a woman just might go on the way and just it's a number. So having all this trauma translated to me growing up until I become 21 years old before I come to the US, where like I wanted to run from this. I want to defend my people in my own way, right? How can I defend them in my own way? I want to represent them to the world. So I started going online to those conferences while I'm in Gaza. And then I got approached by New York University and they were like, oh, we have this scholarship if you want to come to NYU. And I've traveled 3 times maybe. I went to Jordan and Egypt, but this is a new horizon for myself where like I need to change reality. Um, and it was a culture shock. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it took me, first of all, it took me 2 years to just get the visa, and then another, I think, almost a year just to get out. And I came with $400 in my pocket that I borrowed from somebody because we just lost in the 2014 one of the most horrible wars that happened. And we call it war, but it's not a war because there's no military that's happening from here. Just people on the ground versus a whole military. Just there's no other word beside calling it. Now we call it the genocide because it's a genocide. But back in the day, it's just a militia. Just you're attacking people and you pull out and you come in and just as it's your own steps. And I started to be more aware of this of our reality once I came here because I started seeing more resources. Because when you are in this dungeon and this prison, you don't realize what's happening around you, right? You also, and I'm not gonna lie to you, you don't also hear about other conflicts and other things and other injustice in the world because you're being abused and you're being tortured and you're being killed and you're being massacred and all. There's no capability to understand what's happening in this world. So when I came here, my horizon opened very much about a lot of injustice in this world because we were thinking, oh, Palestinians are the only one who's oppressed in this world, right? But we don't have access to international communities that would come to us. It's not a lot of them. All of them would come to help us, but no one is helping us to be aware of what's happening around us. Same as you guys, you would live in New York, you would live in Long Island. You hear of this injustice because of the fact of the scale of what's happening, but it's more deep rooted that education is more essential than any of all of this. A lot of people in Gaza are just sick of like people think that we are not looking for peace. We're looking to live in peace. I'll tell you a story that I had. Actually, when I came to NYU, one of my roommates was an Israeli, and I was shocked in a way. But it was different than what do you think of an Israeli when you were in Gaza, right? And uh he was gay. So he did not tell me that he's gay until days later or weeks even. He was like, I thought that you might kill me. I'm like, where did you get that from? He was like, oh, but I heard that Palestinians and Muslims like, I'm like, here am I, like I'm hearing about you. What's happening? And then he figured out that I'm drinking, and he was like, you guys drinking? I didn't know. Like, I'm like, what are you thinking of us? Like the idea that was literally painted to him, it's just we're some zombies on the borders that trying to come and kill everybody inside there. And he's like, I never met a Palestinian in my life, and this is a different experience and all of that. So look, we just moved a zone, like a bad zone, dangerous zone, to a peace zone to talk and understand each other's. But the black point in there that he served in the military. I did not serve in the military. So I was asking him, imagine if I'm somebody who served in Hamas, which is that's the thing. It's just everything is painted in colors where like the world would just misunderstand what's happening. I'm like, how are you somebody who served in the military and now you're sleeping in the same house as him? How do I know that you did not kill one of my family members? Versus if I was Hamas without knowing that I didn't kill anybody or just I didn't even serve, I'm still guilty. I have to defend myself that this is my right and this is what I need and this is where my family is. My family were in this war and they left in the first ceasefire. And I haven't seen my family for 10 years because I just got my papers after like just 9.5 years that I've been here. And I haven't seen them. And I could have lost my mom and my sister and my brother without seeing for those 9.5 years. And the reason for that, even when I left Gaza, it took me 5 trials because I was trying to go through Egypt and I couldn't. So I had to take the permission from Israel, which took a lot of time because they have to do background checks on you and your family and your background. So I was telling my mom every time I leave the house, I'm like, hey, mom, I'm just going to. So I give them the hugs and whatever. The fifth time that I left is the one when it worked because my dad was like, just leave him. He's coming back. I didn't. I gave them the coldest hug that I've ever given to them. And that was the last one, right? So imagine if I lost him at that point after 9.5 years. Imagine the pain that I had. And that's my closest family. In 2014, I lost 14 cousins in Shujaiya. In this war, I lost almost 123 people from my friends, from my colleagues, from my family, because we're actually from Gaza. We did not come from Haifa, whatever. We actually, so that's if you guys watch Shujaiya and the destruction that they had when they demolished the whole, this is where my family is from. So in watching this, and I've been in a depression cycle. If you guys know me and Farid know me, like after I came from Gaza, it took me time to get used to life in normal and like hearing flights coming up because I would think there's an F-16 coming to bomb me and stuff. It took a lot of trauma and to overcome it. It took a lot. It's a courageous talking to people, trying to merge in this. But at the same time, the trauma came back again when I even tried to immigrate to this country, where like in the immigration officer traumatized the hell out of me, asking me questions and what do you do this and he's trying to play me and like it was a whole like 10 hours the first and 10 hours after that and I got denied and I was referred to deportation court and they wanted to deport me to Iraq. Like I'm like, what do you need more suffering than this that I need to go through so you can approve me as an immigrant? What's an immigrant? What is more than that? And then after I'm being approved, they're trying to send me this travel document, whatever, and they denied me because they said, "Oh, the U.S. does not recognize Palestine as a country. Send us a country that the U.S. should recognize." I'm like, so what do you want me to show you? Like, I am from Palestine. I have nothing else. That's the only passport that I have. So they denied me, and then after that, they sent me a letter to sign, and now I'm stateless. So you're trying to deny me even the most simple things in my own thing. I lost everything. I lost my people. I lost my land. I lost myself. And now you tell me to lose my country? Like imagine you tell me I'm not from the US. Like what should I tell you? You ask I'm from Palestine. I was born there, but I'm Palestinian. What are you trying to take more than that from me? And that's that and I think all of us are realizing now that we like the US was just I feel like we're not living in the US, it's just Israel. Like everything is just politics just goes toward to that direction where like I'm not against your policy. I'm very appreciative to this country. I'm very appreciative to this thing. But be be equal, like be a human being and understand that we are there. We're not animals. We're human beings. I know you called us human animals. I know you called us like it just I want you to recognize me as a person with needs, with love. I party as you, I go out as you, I have a job as you, I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend, I have friends, and I have all of that, like any normal human being. And same as people in Gaza. Now they're telling you, just give us the most simple human rights. Give us AIDS. Let us talk about us, recognize us in this small spot in the world. And the funny thing is, I have Israeli friends because a lot of times, oh, I have Israeli friends, and we talked about it. And now we're friends on Instagram, and I go to their Instagram, and I'm looking at it. You're partying in Tel Aviv, and there's beaches, and there's all of that. Where I open the Snapchat from my friends in Gaza, and the destruction is just, you can't see this in movies. So how are you telling me that this is normal and we're suffering? Which part of the world do you live in? Um, so that's, I don't know if this simplifies things. There's a lot to talk.
Well said, man. It's well said. Wow.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And hang on to your thoughts, because I know we got a lot of questions. I'm gonna toss it over to Karen, and then Farid, you wrap it up with your story, okay? Karen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining today. I'm really humbled to be invited to speak on the topic of the war between Israel and Hamas, because like Terry said, it's a really, really difficult topic to be talking about right now, but essential that we talk about it so that we can be advocating for peace. And of course, I'm not Jewish and I'm not Muslim, I'm not Israeli or Palestinian, but I am a local Christian pastor who recently had the opportunity to travel to Israel on February 4th. I went with a group of New York City faith leaders in order to learn more about the conflict. So I'm sharing with you from my recent experience in Israel, as well as just my own personal reflections on that experience. So while I was in Israel, I had the opportunity to speak with families who were very personally impacted by the massacre on October 7th, when 1,200 people were murdered and 239 people were abducted by Hamas. And I learned Israel's about the size of the state of New Jersey. It's really quite small. So every person was still very much in the midst of this deep trauma and knew somebody impacted by this violence. Some people said they still weren't able to listen to music. It was very, very raw. And there were displaced families living in the hotel that we were staying in Jerusalem. And I had the opportunity to meet and even to hug and hold in my arms a mother and a father whose daughter, Abir, was killed in her home on October 7th. I got to go to Tel Aviv and see Hostages Square, where there are a number of art installations set up to express this collective longing for the remaining hostages to be returned safely home. I think the thing I saw that struck me the most was a giant Shabbat table that had an empty seat for each of the hostages with a butterfly for those who had died. And the part of the table that represented people still in captivity was like dirty and reflective of people likely not having enough food. We were able to hear from leaders in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We heard from people doing trauma work in Israel. A really moving experience was leaving candles at the locations of the Nova Music Festival, where there were just a sea of pictures of people who were killed there, like a lot of young people who were actually working for peace. And I had the opportunity to go to Kibbutz Kfar Aza in the Gaza envelope, where a lifelong resident, a woman named Hen, showed us inside of the bullet-strewn houses, and she told us the story of each of her neighbors and how one family managed to survive on October 7th while another family did not. So my heart was being broken open every single day, seeing this deep grief and trauma from the violence on October 7th. But of course, every single second I was there, my heart was also broken open for the countless Palestinians grieving the slaughter of their loved ones in Gaza. So when I stood at the Gaza envelope in that kibbutz, I could see the smoke in the air over Gaza. And I could hear the planes going by, followed by the sound of bombs. And I thought, what would, if I had been able to go there to learn and bear witness, what would I have seen? What would I have come away with? So every day that I was eating, in Israel, I knew and was thinking very much about how there were children starving to death, like so close to me. And now that I've gotten back, we know that 30,000 people have been killed in Gaza in this horrible war, that 2 million people, most of the population, has had to flee their homes, and more than half of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed or damaged. And like 96% of Gaza's agricultural infrastructure is damaged or destroyed. So the lack of food there is so severe right now that 1 in 6 children under the age of 2 years old are suffering from acute malnutrition. Like, this is a real famine situation. And I'm sure many of you saw that last week 100 starving people were killed and 700 people were wounded as they waited for food from an aid convoy. So I keep thinking, in this season of Lent leading to Easter, as a Christian pastor, how many more children are going to die in Gaza between now and Easter? And what can I do as a US citizen whose taxpayer money is buying the weapons? So while I was in Israel and thinking of these things, I wanted to bear witness to people sharing their pain with me in the midst of their deep grief, while also asking hard questions and asking people what they thought about the war. And everyone had a different perspective. I saw a group of Israelis protesting in Tel Aviv, holding up signs that said, "Stop the genocide." I heard many people express their belief that the total eradication of Hamas is the only way they will ever feel safe, and who said they very much supported the war as necessary for the preservation of the nation of Israel. That was hard to hear, but everyone said that they, of course, didn't want any innocent Palestinians to die in this war. But some kind of blamed it all on Hamas, saying, Hamas is operating out of civilian centers like schools and hospitals, and that's what's resulting in the civilian casualties, while others were more critical of the Israeli military for going too far and clearly exacting revenge on civilians. I'd say most people were very critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu and very concerned about how far right the government has become. Most people were critical of those building more settlements in the West Bank and in northern Gaza right now. And I'll just share a few perspectives that will stick with me the most after my trip. When we were in the West Bank, we heard from 2 people who belonged to an organization called Roots. One of them was a Zionist Jewish settler who was born in Brooklyn and moved to the West Bank with the intention of reclaiming the Jewish homeland. And the other person was a lifelong Palestinian resident of the West Bank. And the Zionist settler, Rabbi Schlesinger, told us the story of how, when he started to be able to have dialogue with Palestinians in the West Bank for the first time in his life, he had never heard the word Nakba before. He had never even heard that there was an occupation. And when he started to be able to hear a Palestinian perspective, he came to see that there indeed is an occupation, and that Palestinians in the West Bank have been deprived of their civil rights, and he described it as an apartheid situation that he felt a calling on his life to protest and to work against. And then the Palestinian lifelong resident of the West Bank, Noor, felt like, there has to be a violent solution here to this occupation. But when he started to be able to have dialogue with people like Rabbi Schlesinger, his perspective changed, and he wanted to work more for peace through dialogue and through nonviolent resistance. And what they shared was that they had both, through an encounter with the other, seen that neither group of people is going anywhere, and neither narrative is the whole truth, but you have to have two truths in one heart for there to be any future and any peace.
Yep.
And lastly, I think the thing I'll remember the most is what Ken said at the end of showing us the devastation in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. As we were looking at Gaza, as we were looking at the smoke in the air, she who had just seen most of her loved ones murdered said, "What I want is shalom. What I want is peace. Peace and well-being for everybody." And that's what I'll remember the most. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen.
Well said.
Farid? That's
Yeah,
a hard act to follow.
that was really, I mean, between what you and Arkhan said was really, really on point. Just a few things to kind of think about, like when you're taking a step back from everything. You know, I've had the luxury of living in the United States and not having to have bombs banging, over my head. And when people are conditioned for a certain way, like Arkhan said, he was conditioned for bombings every single day, and then something happens to an area that you're not used to it, it feels that much worse. So when you talk about 1,200 people, that's horrible. But when you start to realize the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that were murdered, raped, and everything else, that doesn't come up as much in the news because everything's kind of muted out there. It doesn't give both sides of the story. So when I grew up, I went back overseas. My father would send us back to the West Bank, which is like more of the Arab side, but my mother was from Beit Hanina, which is in Jerusalem, which is more on the Israeli Jewish side. I grew up while I was there for a few years and was very close to some Christian Arabs. And I never realized how close the Christians and the Muslims were in Palestine. And people don't realize how many Christians there are. There are quite a few in there. So what this did, October 7th was horrible. But what it really did was it put a magnifying glass on a larger issue that's been kind of muffled down about what the real issues are. Karen brought it up a lot, and Arkhan were talking about it, but it united the non-Zionist Jews, so the Jews that were born into the faith, that believe in it, real like deep Christians, Muslims, and Jews together. I've never seen the glue. I went to a protest in Washington, D.C. There were more Jewish folks around us than I've never seen so many Jews in my life. And then the not in my name Jews that have become now their own like almost sect of Judaism have come out, and a lot of Christians have banded. The few that are almost remaining now in the Israel side and Palestinian side. When I was growing up, I didn't realize that when someone stepped out to try to make a name for themselves or try to put a focus in the world, they have nothing. He wasn't kidding, Arkhan. They did a pipe bomb, or they did some kind of crazy thing. It's almost out of desperation, right, to get attention to the area. And when they did these horrible things, it's horrible, but they did it to get attention to what was really going on. But anytime someone, and I don't know if you guys know this, but it's a known thing, you can look this up. If one Palestinian kills any other Israeli, they will bulldoze their home where their family lives and start to arrest their family. So not only do they kill the person, unless they killed themselves already through like some kind of bombing or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, they killed themselves. They bulldoze the family's home and they start to arrest folks in the family. They detain them. And there's an unlimited detainment. If they feel that there's a threat in any way, if there's someone saying something, someone staring at someone, whatever the case may be, they'll detain them. And there are kids that have grown up in detention centers just because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they had a suspicion around them. And then you know how it is here in the States. When you get arrested for whatever reason, you go through the system, you're never the same, even if you are innocent or not. And all it does is it sparks resentment. And that's what Pastor Pershing was talking about. It's kind of like there's this, you could feel it in the room. Like it's not like a hatred, it's like a disbelief almost at what's happening in the environment. So everyone starts to grow this hatred on both sides, whether it's someone's grandmother, grandson, grandchild will just grow up to be future terrorists. And I think actually Elon Musk brought this up. He said, what we're doing by all this, when Pastor Pershing said going too far, is you're making future children resent everyone around them to grow up to want to exact revenge. So when we talk about 12,000 folks that were murdered, you have to think about 30,000 folks that were murdered against, nowhere to run, could not escape, told to go to go south. They started to go south, getting bombed the whole way down. Then they go way to the bottom, and they're still getting bombed to hell. And they cannot go into Egypt because they're locked out. The famine that Dr. Pershing was talking about, the religion, the Christians, the Muslims, staying in churches that are getting bombed to hell. If you look it up, some of the oldest churches in history have been bombed out in Gaza. So there's no exact innocence here, but when an Arkhan said that it's like rocks against grenades and so on, this is a truth. Every Israeli is mandated by law to join the military. There are no innocent folks that do not have a rifle in every single person's home to protect themselves. Here, we don't have that in the United States. We rely on the police and the military. Every single family is ex-IDF or current IDF. You're never really ex-IDF. You're always IDF for life. They can always recall you back. So everyone is ready to go to war at any moment. So when people are sitting there with their hands tied, it's literally just buckle down, stop, drop, and roll into a grenade or some kind of bombing. One thing I'll leave you all with, and the reason why I was so passionate about this, if I had my mother, and think about your closest family in a building in New York City, and you want to make sure that your mother, who was kidnapped, okay, didn't get killed in the kidnapping, you're not going to bomb New York City. You're going to surgically go in to do what you need to do because you want to save your mom, because your mom means something to you, and everyone else that's in those buildings. Israel has the second best military in the entire world. In fact, they train our military, okay? They are unbelievable. I actually know a lot of IDF, a lot of them in New York. I'm actually close with them, and these conversations have been very difficult with them. It's broken some of our relationships apart. But they all know that's been taken too far. All of those families of the 200 plus folks that have family that have been detained, that have been hostage for folks, they all can't understand why we're carpet bombing areas where their family could be. It doesn't make sense to them. So if you're going to carpet bomb an area, it's happening for one of two reasons. You're looking to eradicate everyone and push them out so that they can never come back again to get land, so like a land grab, or you have complete disregard for human beings. It's one or the other. There's nothing there. You could say you want to kill all the Hamas, but you're killing your own people too. So it's like, how do you find that safe middle ground? You build a two-state solution. But if you ask Netanyahu, if you ask any of the folks, they're far right, they do not want a two-state solution. They'll say, oh, the Arabs don't want it. The Arabs are desperate. They'll take anything. And I'm telling you right now, they have literally went on TV and said, we do not want a two-state solution. So I know that the military of the United States is going to be there soon. I think they're saying 1,000 troops, thank God, to see like what the reality is on the ground. But this is a very sad situation. I know too many families that have been impacted on both sides. My chief risk officer in my company, literally is IDF, former IDF, and his son's in the military. One of my coaches is IDF, he's Israeli. I have no hatred at all for Israelis. Definitely have no hatred for Jews. But when it comes to Zionism and the idealist mindset of like it's only us, only Jewish state, that's where Jesus was born. This is a Christian, Muslim, and Jewish state. Stop that it's only a Jewish state. It's Israel's Israel. You know, you could still have, everyone can have their own places, enough land to go around when it relates to people that already live there. And that's all I'll say. I'm all for any type of peace. Like you said, shalom. We say salam in Arabic. Anything that can make it work. There's no easy answer, as you guys know. But thanks for hearing us out. I think Pastor Pershing, you really hit both sides in that. And Arkhan, thank you for giving your insights.
Thank you, Farid. Thank you so much. We just want to remind you to put questions in the chat or thought you want to bounce out on our speakers. That would be really welcome. One question that to put this to all the speakers: how do you distinguish between Palestinian civilians and Hamas? How is that possible?
I can answer that from, if you don't mind, and from
Thank you.
a ground perspective. I just want to say, just from a background knowledge about Hamas. First of all, Hamas was founded as a state in 1989, and to 91 is when they formally started to be, let's call it a military or a militia group in Gaza, and their goal was nothing but to defend the land that they're on it, right? We don't have a military because before that it was Yasser Arafat, the former president of the Palestinian former president, who died 20 something years ago. Yasser Arafat also started as somebody equivalent to Hamas back in the day. Started as somebody who believed in the liberation of the Palestinians and liberation of Palestine by force, not by peace. Because he realized that over the years since 1948, since the Nakba, as Farid said, that a lot of people don't know, and I really encourage you who did not watch a movie called Tantura to watch Tantura. And that was an example of how it started, of just Palestinians. When the Jewish came to the land of the Palestinians, the big sign was on one of the ships that they destroyed our homes, don't destroy our hopes. And they were talking about the Nazis. And my grandma was one of those people who welcomed those people to come to a land that you don't know who you are. But Middle Eastern are known for their generous, welcoming and food and stuff like that. So when you come to somebody who give you the hand and you bite that hand, this is not ethical, especially when you come from a background from somebody who used to suffer. So over the years, Yasser Arafat and Layla Khaled, who also used to be in the military and stuff, believe that we need to liberate this land by force because we've been forced out and we need to force them back. We need anybody. If somebody comes to my room right now or my house with a weapon, I'm not going to just like, hey, come in, shalom. No, that's not going to be shalom or peace to anybody. It's either you're going to call the police, which is what's happening now. The U.S. is the 911 for Israel nowadays, or you're going to defend it yourself. But then Yasser Arafat realized that also we're not as powerful to be equivalent to this big military, as Farid said, that it's one of the second, and they say it's the fourth largest army in the world after China, Russia, and the US, against somebody who doesn't have even a stone to fight with. So then we realize that we need to go to a peace solution. And the peace solution is when the Oslo Agreement came in, and that was with Rabin. If you guys heard of Rabin, and Rabin was almost worse than Netanyahu back in the day. Rabin used to really believe in killing the Palestinian kids. So they would say, the quote unquote was saying by, what's her name, the former Israeli prime minister, when she said,
Golda Meir.
Golda Meir, she said, I don't even know if it's Golda Meir who said that. She said that the old will die and the young will forget. And that did not happen. And that was the plan. And that's what historians wanted. Over the years, those old people will die and will not talk about what happened. And those young people will just forget about it because they're going to be technologies and going to be all of that. And that did not happen. So Rabin believed in peace too, after he believed in killing those kids. And he shook the hands with Yasser Arafat. But guess who killed all of that? Is Netanyahu. And that's why I always say, and nobody believed me, and I watch intensively about Netanyahu and his old debate. This guy is a pure devil. The way that he used to talk to politicians and stuff, and when I watch things, I'm like, holy crap, this guy was a warning for us that we did not see. Watch all the things. He's the reason that Rabin, imagine if things was just as crystal as it used to be when the Oslo Agreement was signed, where peace treaty was signed between the Palestinian and the Israeli, a two-state solution and all of that. Then Netanyahu came and gathered all those people. I was like, oh, Rabin is going to make us make peace with the Palestinians. There was no Hamas back in the day. It was not fighting Hamas. We did not. If you bring me Hamas in the word when Oslo Agreement was here, come and tell me you're wrong. It did not happen about Hamas. It was the Palestinians. And then this far right student who came and shot Rabin, and even the American politician and the president was like, when Rabin died, the peace treaty died. And this how long it had been? 24 was the 30 years it has been, and look, nothing has been solved. So Netanyahu is the source of the problem. He does not believe in any states in two-state solution. He believes that the Zionists the Israelis have to have their own thing. Palestinians have to be kicked out. And this is where Hamas came into this equation. And they started to be from a military group to a governor group, because also Palestinians believe that, okay, we need to change this. And then we need to do elections. And Hamas won those elections, not in the West Bank, it's in Gaza. And three big, bold red lines under that, because you always excuse about Hamas and bombing and Gaza and stuff, but what about the killing in the West Bank, the kids and the babies and the settlements and all of that? It has nothing to do with Hamas. So about equivalent, about
Arkhan, real quick,
about,
what he's saying just now, so if you guys are aware, Gaza is completely separate from the West Bank. And what he just said just now is that Hamas runs as a government and has a military arm in Gaza only, not in the West Bank. And people in West Bank are getting killed, and all this stuff is still happening there on both sides. But West Bank is governed 100% by Israel, checkpoints and everything. So when he says that Hamas has nothing to do with the West Bank, they're still getting killed. That's a fact. That's any BBC, any news you can see, that's actually happening.
That's correct, because because Gaza is siege, and that's why it's siege, because they say it's under Hamas. But the West Bank is not. You literally can go to any specific house you want in the middle of the night, take whoever you want, kill them, and come out. Where you can't do this in Gaza, you just have to bomb it. Beside this thing that happened. So speaking, how can you tell who's Hamas and who's not? It's a myth. I'm gonna tell you, because that's what, and as he said, Elon Musk said that when you kill one Hamas member, you're gonna create 10 more, because it's the belief. If you come to me in my own house that I live in Long Island City, you come to me and you're like, oh, your name is whatever group. I'm not. It's not because I'm Hamas. My name is Arkhan group. Called Arkhan. I said a million times that if Hamas changed their name to like the Mets or like Real Madrid, it's gonna be the same thing. Because before Hamas, there was million Hamas. There was the PFLP and Palestinians in general. It's just somebody who had their bandana on. If they take that bandana off, they're Palestinians at the core. There's no other reason for them besides liberating their land and live in peace. I'm not gonna lie to you. At the beginning of the charter, before 2018, the charter was like, we're gonna liberate all Palestine, blah blah blah. But you changed that charter a long time ago. 2018, they said we believe in the 1967 borders, with the United Nations had to recognize. And those the most radical people that we have. Let's call them the radicals. The Hamas are the radicals. But now in Israel, they're talking about nukes and about annihilations and move them to Egypt, and like, oh, why does not Egypt accept you? If we flip that questions, because that was one of the biggest arguments, that none of those countries in the world are accepting the Jews, and now you're applying it on the Palestinians. Now you're killing the Palestinians. Now you're massacring the Palestinians, genociding the Palestinians. Now you're trading their body parts and stuff. Like, what else has left for you? So that's what I'm saying. It's recognizing who's Hamas and who's not. It's a math questions, and that they just built it in your brain to believe that this is the wrong person. Go against him. No, because if Hamas is gone today, trust me. You tell me if Hamas go with their weapons, that because they said that, and they made those propaganda videos before, and we knew those people, civilians who used to be cousins and friends of us, and to pretend to be Hamas with their weapons out. Nothing's gonna change. Netanyahu's not. He wants Hamas out because after that, he's going to take over Gaza and get the hell out of here. There's no power to force him. The fact that he wants Hamas out is because, look, until now, it's been 5 months. And this small treaty things, Hamas does not have flights, does not have F-16, does not have anything. And you can't even find your hostages. If you really believe in taking your hostages out, and I'm not going to, as Farid said, I have Israeli friends. On October 7th, I was in Barcelona with my Israeli, Palestinian friends. I was the first one to check on them. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants an ant to be even injured or dead. But Netanyahu does not care about that. Every single day, there's more hostages are dying. So don't tell me it's about them. And I guarantee you, if God forbid all of those hostages are done, there's no excuse more than to even nuke Gaza. I'm going to tell you another thing. For example, he said that Hamas is building their tunnels and weapons between civilians. Gaza is very small, guys. Gaza is 10 minutes to 10 minutes from the east to the west, and 20 to 25 minutes from north to south. What does that mean? That means if I put up a military base in somewhere, it's already 20 minutes. If you put it on the south and there's civilian in the north, it's already 25 minutes away. That's what the fact. But never somebody said about Israel, because Israel is almost the same size as Gaza, right? They have a nuclear weapon that's 5 minutes. They own a nuclear weapon. It's 5 minutes from settlements next to it. same as their military bases, because that's how small is it. But nobody would say, oh, Israel is hiding the military weapons between their settlements. Look at them, they're hiding between civilians. It does not make sense. This is how geographically is Gaza is small, because back in the day, Hamas used to have literally like their like base, whatever, outside, and they bomb it. And now, like, oh, you know what? We're just gonna go under tunnel. But where are you gonna go? You're not gonna go into Egypt. You're not gonna build it under. You need to have something. You're not gonna just be naked without weapons and anything, and you're gonna get slapped left and right, because that's literally what's happening in the West Bank. In the middle of the night, they go kill whoever they want and they pull out, and that's what Hamas didn't want. I'm not a supporter of Hamas. I'm not a supporter of anybody. I'm a supporter of my people to have their freedom and dignity and live in peace. If a lot of people are against the police here in America, and I'm sometimes I'm like I'm against in a way, because I'm like, if somebody comes to rob your house, you're not gonna call your roommates, you're gonna call 911. You need somebody to save you. Even if you're saying the police and F the police and all of that, you still believe in that. So the same thing. So the question is like, Hamas is not gonna be in a uniform where like, oh, you can organize them and stuff. Sometimes they do those military shows, whatever. But again, it's just a myth questions, in my opinions, with all due respect.
Thank you so much, Arkhan. Thank you. We have a comment from Jill Cornell, and I'm going to read it. Jill writes, and one of my concerns is the proliferation of hate-filled memes. Is that how we say it? Memes?
Oh, memes. Okay.
Memes from both sides, which seems to me are originating from Russian troll farms. They are looking to widen the wedge among Americans and others. I especially see my Zionist Jewish friends posting the most horrific memes.
Memes, yeah. I'll
It's
just say a
also
quick one.
fermenting intense division among pro-Palestinian progressives. It's terrifying to me.
I'm going to give you a real quick spiel on that one, Pastor Troy, and Karen, I hope you come in right behind this. So just the memes are kind of like what incited a bit of deeper dialogue with some Israeli friends of mine. And it's interesting because there's a huge dynamic from, like I said, Jewish versus Israeli that you get in this. I have friends that are Russian Jewish. I have Ukrainian Jewish friends, and then I have Hasidic Jews, and then I have some of the Israeli. And my conversations with everyone but the Israeli Jews is very, very different because they have a deeper connection to the land, right? So without saying anything, there's always going to be some kind of twist on that. Both sides are right. Both sides are right. And the problem with having even partial right on both sides, and I hate using the word sides because these are cousins, these are literally Isaac and Ishmael, these are cousins that are fighting each other. It's so deep rooted this stuff, okay? But when both sides are right, you can make an argument and you can basically prove that the meme is right. But it's 10% right. And if it's 90% wrong, it doesn't matter because there's some truth to it. Just like a joke, a bad joke, a racial joke, a this joke, or that joke, there's truth to it. Now, here's what the meme farm situation that Jill was talking about, why it's so dangerous. When I was in Washington, D.C., it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. The Democrats that were in Washington, D.C., I'm talking about ultra liberal, ultra left, okay? Literally was saying, I was hearing the conversation, I don't know how the F I voted for this president. These are people that would never, ever say this, and they would blindly go blue all day, every day, okay? But because these memes and everything that's pushing all of this hatred on both sides and focusing on the 2% truth and 98% of the BS, they will go with it. And when you don't get both sides of the story, you go hardcore in one direction. Biden is forced to contend with the people around him. And if you're going to end up supporting Israel, you support them all the way. And I understand when someone's an ally, you're going to, even your best friend, you shouldn't drive that car. You know, you've been drinking. Oh, no, this and that, another speech you'll get. There's going to be some level of honesty, but you'll never go too far. And I feel like we've taken it as the United States government. We went way too far in blindly supporting it, that now it's actually impacting the future of this country in terms of what president gets selected and what the hell happens from this point on. It's because we never kept our best friend in check. And Israel's our best friend. We never kept him in check. Karen said it perfectly, went too far. We did. But now we thought this was going to get blown over in 2 months, 3 months. We didn't know it was going to be past 6 months. We didn't know the Ukraine war was going to go 2 years. So the reality is, you can never guess. And after COVID, memes and being able to connect with someone at home and have this Zoom session, this is all new for us. So people know how to monopolize that and really impact you and get into your brain. And it's gonna incite the craziest things in the future. And I'm telling you, if you can start to influence elections like this, is just the beginning of really quick escalations in the future. Sorry, I went a little too far on that one, but joined both sides of it.
Thanks, Farid. I'm going to kick it back. We're into our last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
To Reverend Pershing. Jill raises these 3 words: the proliferation of hate. Where and how do Christians love this situation into healing and redemption?
Yeah, beautiful question. I agree with Jill that this purposeful and politically strategic polarization is really disturbing. And, you know, we call Israel the Holy Land for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And what do Christians, Jews, and Muslims believe? But that the purpose of life is to love God and neighbor. And there's not a lot of love. There's a lot of hateful speech, a lot of speaking of the other as a, you know, just an utter enemy, and a lack of dialogue and understanding. So for me, I feel comfortable saying that what Hamas did on October 7th was evil.
Yep.
And what the Israeli military has done and is doing to civilians in Gaza is evil. And as a Christian pastor, you know, I believe all people are made in the image of God. So every Israeli and Palestinian life is precious and sacred and worth being protected. And so, you know, right when I got back from Israel, I heard that there was a Jewish man in my own community in Mariners Harbor who was beaten by somebody with a baseball bat, targeted because he was wearing a yarmulke. And so I joined a press conference to speak out against that act of violence and hatred. That's one of the main missions of our clergy coalition on Staten Island Interreligious Leadership, to be a rapid response network that whenever there's an act of hatred, especially a religiously motivated one, we stand up and we condemn that violence, and we speak up for love and understanding. So whether it's an anti-Semitic attack or an Islamophobic attack, we're there to spread love and to speak out against violence. But I think just for me as a Christian, how do I move forward with what I learned in Israel? I think we can all be reaching out to our Jewish and Palestinian acquaintances, friends, colleagues, knowing that they're in pain and need us just to reach out to express our care and concern for them with what's happening in the world. I think we can continue to learn. I'm trying to read articles from Haaretz and from Palestinian news outlets, Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera.
Yeah, and the New York Times, to see, you know, when something happens like the attack on the aid convoy, how are these different media outlets reporting on it? And how is it different from between Al Jazeera and the New York Times and Haaretz? And then, of course, I think we are called to stand up for a permanent ceasefire. And when we say that, it means no more bombing, no more ground war, releasing the hostages, and the U.S. in concert with other nations making real demands on Israel and Hamas to end all hostilities and insist that Israel allow in humanitarian aid and end the siege. So I would really encourage everyone to reach out to their own elected officials to call for a permanent ceasefire and to be a part of peaceful protests with that message.
Thank you. I'm just checking, we're sure we don't have any other questions. It truthfully does does leave you speechless. Just to wrap up, Arkhan, if you just want to say a few final words about where we go from here, and then kick it over to Farid.
To be honest, is it's really hard um to even know what's next, because that's I think is one of I actually follow, as you, Karen, I follow actually Israeli outlets, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting actually. I also have Israeli friends who think, you would say, "Oh, the U.S. is BSing us, like it's nobody likes us, and we Palestinians, we think that they are against us. We don't know who is with who. Medias is just very manipulative. I think what changed this time is we had people on the ground from Gaza, but yeah, there's something Netanyahu made it. What's after the war? Even the Israeli officials were like asking us, "What's post the war? What's your plan?" He doesn't have a plan, and I don't know what's happening to my people. To be honest, rain is coming, winter is here, summer is there. Like people are living in tents. Are we gonna push those people to Egypt? I don't know. I need this occupation to end. I need my people to come back. It's terrible, because even they said it's going to take tens of years now to even take the rubble out before you start rebuilding. My family lost everything they had. I've lost everything I had, from properties, from my houses, from like memories and stuff, which been used to it, but now it's just zero. Like people who used to be in the 100 now to the zero, and people on the 1 to the zero. I really want the occupation to end. I want as you mentioned, Karen, a permanent ceasefire. I want my people to come back to their normal life, because they are living like animals now. You prescribe them. I'm just I can't, like, I cry every day before I sleep sometimes, from internally, just to even think how we just have an umbrella to even go out, and people don't even have tents over their heads. And it's beautiful when I even see Ramadan is coming tomorrow, and you see that people are organized even in their own tents, and it just breaks my heart. And the privilege that we live in, I did not have that privilege before, and now I have this privilege, and people are lacking it. I just want us to feel and have a minute of silence every day, just even remember and appreciate where we live and what we have, and to use another minute just to spread a peaceful thing, not about just Palestinians, about Israelis, because they are the same thing. The civilians there also deserve to live in peace, same as Palestinians and any human being in this world. So that's why I want to end myself.
Thank you.
You can feel it. You definitely feel it. Just a closing thought, just something to keep in mind. I mean, we in our country, and just some full disclosure, when I lived overseas in 91 through 93, I was never accepted as a Palestinian in my own country because I was American. So I'm a lost identity. Now, while I'm in America, I'm Palestinian. My last name, you see my last name, Abdel Kader, trust me, all day, every day, there's going to be something. But something people don't realize is that with desperate people, desperate things happen. Hurt people, right? Keeping that mentality in mind goes a long way and really puts the context into this. We have a court in the United States, right? We have separation of powers. We have the Congress, we have the executive branch as the president. What you guys may not realize is that before all of this went down, okay, there were Israelis in the streets in Jerusalem protesting like crazy that Netanyahu was shutting down the courts. They were going nuts, okay? And the only way to get what you need is through fear, okay? He felt that the courts were shutting down the aggression that he needed to do to move his agenda along. Sounds very familiar. Hardcore, right-leaning individual, Netanyahu. I don't care for the guy, but I'm just giving you like real context. You can look at Haaretz, any news in the Israeli side. It's no question that they were trying to shut down the courts. Now, this is important. The only way you shut down the courts is they were investigating him. His own country is investigating Netanyahu. He's about to go to jail. This all sounds familiar, right? The same stuff's happening in the United States. It was all happening with Netanyahu, okay? And then October 7th happened. Happened literally a week after the final close, like they were putting the petitions in with the protest and everything else with the courts. October 7th happened, which is horrible. And then we are where we're at now. It's pushed all of that. Why did you close down the courts? What's going on right now? Why are you being investigated? Why are Israelis in front of your house trying to throw rocks at your house from the beginning of this war to this very moment? He's literally on watch, where they may end up killing their own prime minister. I learned a long time ago, and more recently, when you're in a room and the whole room is telling you you're wrong, you're wrong. And when the whole world is looking at this and they're protesting from here to Turkey to China to Korea and all these different countries around the whole world are saying to stop, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong here. The United Nations, every single person, every country, except our allies, the UK, the United States, have said veto to the ceasefire. We are letting our friends go too far. A good friend is a friend that keeps you in check and says, you're doing something wrong. I gotta tell you the truth here, because it's gonna end up hurting all of us. And if this continues on, as a citizen of the United States with my passport, I would never want to show my passport, because God forbid I'll get retaliated against somewhere else. Because we're feeding with our tax dollars, as Karen mentioned, our tax dollars are dropping bombs into this area. I don't care what the reasons are. People getting killed. There's no reason for it. We went too far. That's where I'll leave it at.
Thanks. Thank you, Farid. Karen, can you close us out with some kind of prayer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to. God of all people, we lift our hearts in prayer for people in Gaza today, for the many, many Palestinians who are hungry, for people in Gaza and in Israel who are mourning the murder of their loved ones. God, for all of this pain and all of this suffering, forgive us and show us the way forward to lasting peace. Use each one of us here to combat these seeds of hate and to sow love and understanding and dialogue, and to work for shalom, your peace for all your beloved people. Amen.
Amen.
We thank everybody for being on today, especially the members of our task force, and just read their names out. Phyllis Petito and Beverly Tambasco, Steve DaCosta, Tim Tan. Thank you for joining us. Oh, and Millicent Arundel, thank you for joining us. Magda and Jill Cornell, we welcome you, and Lucas. Thanks to our speakers who shared from the heart and brought us breadth and depth, and placed in our hands much of the responsibility to make peace in the future, starting tomorrow, in this land. Thank you, Arkhan, for speaking so eloquently and so honestly about your experience as a Gazan. Thank you, Farid, always for your thoughtfulness, your analysis, and your steadfastness. And
Love you
thank you,
guys.
Karen,
Thank you.
for your grace and your presence and your words of peace. Everybody, this is the Huguenot Park Reformed Church Racial and Social Justice Task Force Zoom. We thank you for being with us. I hope that this inspires those of us who listened and those of us who spoke to work for peace in the Middle East. Amen. Take care. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye bye.